Good Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. New this afternoon, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison announcing a lawsuit against the federal government over evidence in 3 shootings by federal agents in Minneapolis during Operation Metro Surge.
Every person in this country deserves transparency and accountability from their government. Minnesotans saw Renee Good and Alex Preddy die at the hands of federal agents. Julio Sosa Solis was shot and ICE agents lied about what happened. Now Minnesotans are seeing their federal government hide evidence and obstruct investigations into these incidents. We will not sit by and let that happen.
That lawsuit comes after several requests from both offices for access to evidence. The feds saying that local authorities do not have the jurisdiction to investigate those shootings. This story will be developing all day, so stick with Kare 11 Plus for the latest on this new lawsuit. New today, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen has been confirmed as the new Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He's taking over a department that's not been funded since February 14th. That means TSA workers are going without pay, and hundreds are calling out every day or quitting. That's causing long lines at some of the busiest airports in the country. But there is a potential breakthrough to break those long lines plaguing those airports. Senate Republicans meeting with President Trump on a plan to fund the Department of Homeland Security, something Democrats have refused to do unless they get changes to ICE and Border Patrol. Right now, Democrats want to separate money for TSA and FEMA from the rest of DHS. President Trump wants DHS funding tied to stiffer voter ID laws, something Democrats say is a non-starter. If you have flown lately or you're getting ready for a spring getaway, you might have heard about those airport security lines that have been a mess due to the government shutdown. But you also might have heard that MSP is not one of those airports, at least not yet. So as ICE agents begin to deploy at more than a dozen airports around the country, what does it mean for us? Ken Erdahl spoke to some arriving from those airports to find out.
Well, it's still smooth sailing for anyone flying out of MSP this week. For those flying in, trouble's already on the horizon.
I mean, crazy.
Mario Falon showed up at 3:30 this morning for a 7 a.m. flight out of Austin, Texas.
I guess about 3:45, 15 minutes after I got there, the lines just started growing.
He says it still took him an hour and a half to make it through TSA pre-check, but that was nothing compared to Houston.
It took us like a good 2.5 hours to get through.
And Sean Brocky says most of the people in line after him and his fiance waited much, much longer.
After we had been in it for maybe an hour, it was like all the way out the building.
Houston is one of at least 9 major airports where TSA callouts exceeded 20% of the workforce this weekend, leading to long lines and unpredictable waits.
It's just a crapshoot right now.
Kyle Potter, editor of the Thrifty Traveler, says each day that the shutdown goes on creates more chance for disruption. And with the biggest spring break surge yet to hit MSP, he says travelers shouldn't chance it.
Go to the airport earlier than you otherwise would, even if it is an airport like Minneapolis, because you never know what tomorrow is going to look like. If you can skip checking a bag, I would do that. I would try to pack in just a carry-on because the checked bag lines, especially during the thick of spring break travel season, tend to be some of the worst lines in any airport. This has become truly unpredictable, so it's really hard to give people concrete guidance beyond hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
And he says it's still way too early to know if the addition of ICE agents in some airports this morning will have much impact.
Tom Homan said today that they're starting with 14 and there will be more. When that might happen, what airports those may be, I don't know. And, I think it's still very much an open question about what these ICE agents are doing.
I don't see an ICE agent looking at an x-ray machine because we're not trained in that. There are certain parts of security that TSA is doing that we can move them off those jobs and put them in the specialized jobs, help move those lines.
It's not helpful, and I don't know. It's just a confusing way to go about it, I think.
Sean says he noticed a couple of ICE officers in Houston this morning, but so far didn't notice any difference.
I don't really want them there at all, and then having to deal with them in any capacity. It's just a free zone for them to pick people off, I would assume.
I guess it's better than having people walk off the job, right? But as long as they're not, harassing people like they were doing out in the streets, I think that'd be fine.
Right now, state lawmakers are taking a close look at huge amounts of cash literally flying out of MSP. Those lawmakers say some of it is tied to fraud in state programs. Fraud Committee Chair Kristen Robbins says $700 million in cash has been packed in luggage and flown overseas from MSP in the last 2 years. Robbins says she thinks a significant portion of that money is laundered from defrauding taxpayer-funded programs in Minnesota, but she did not offer evidence of that. A former TSA agent testified she was also suspicious of the suitcases full of money.
For context, we have the 16th largest airport. That number, $350 million leaving our airport in cash, is higher than the cash leaving any other airport in the country, including much larger airports, JFK, LAX.
DFL lawmakers from the committee were frustrated because this is a federal issue overseen by the Treasury Department and Homeland Security. And if it involves fraud, it would be up to those officials to investigate and pursue charges. Many small businesses in our community say they're still in the hole after Operation Metro Surge. This week, the state Senate advanced proposals to provide them emergency relief funding. Danny Spiewak has more on the bills and the path they may face in a divided legislature.
According to a study done by Greater MSP, small businesses in the Twin Cities have lost more than $200 million since the start of Operation Metro Surge. Juan Lopez knows that firsthand.
We stayed open, we adapted, we paid overtime to employees who showed up.
Lopez told the Senate Jobs Committee that his businesses in St. Paul's North End have taken a huge hit.
At one point, our grocery store dropped about 30% of its normal sales. Foot traffic slowed significantly, and we lost inventory as perishable items expired.
In response, DFL Senator Susan Pah has proposed the establishment of a new $100 million grant program with the backing of major business groups like the Minneapolis Downtown Council.
These are extremely trying times.
To be considered for grants, businesses would need to prove at least a 20% drop in revenue because of federal immigration enforcement and would be selected through a lottery.
I am asking for your support today in making sure that we help our small businesses.
Republicans on the committee raised a number of questions.
There's just too many holes.
GOP Senator Carla Nelson criticized the eligibility and selection process for businesses.
This is much too broad, and it does not ensure that the funds will be used, I think, in the way that you are seeking.
Republicans also raised concerns about fraud. For that reason, the bill includes specific protections, including requirements that deed forward any suspicious activity to the BCA.
Things that we already do. I think this looks a bit like comfort language to me.
Ultimately, this DFL-led Senate committee voted to advance this bill, which means that it could be included in a larger bill later this session, but not clear if it would pass the House, which of course is tied, and Republican leaders in that chamber earlier this month were resistant to similar efforts. At the Capitol, I'm Danny Spiewak, Kare 11 News.
The Senate Jobs Committee is debating a separate bill to create a loan program for businesses impacted by the surge. New video today shows the moment an Air Canada passenger plane slammed into a fire truck at LaGuardia Airport in New York. That truck was just given clearance by air traffic control to cross the runway. The NTSB, FAA, and Port Authority are all investigating. Tom Costello's here now with the latest.
Good day. So listen, the investigation is clearly going to be focused on those 3 words from the controller who said, "I messed up." The question is, why did a controller allow that fire engine to cross over that active runway, runway 4 at taxiway Delta? It is a cardinal rule that always at an airport on the field, air traffic has the priority and the right of way, not a fire engine, even with flashing lights. It is always the air traffic. Because when you come in, landing at 130, 140 miles per hour, just like a freight train, you cannot stop on a dime and you cannot steer out of the way, right? You are going to have a collision if somebody pulls in front of you. The question is then, why did this happen? Now, in addition, we're looking into why there was one controller doing 2 jobs in the tower. Importantly, that does not mean there was only one person in the tower. It means that one controller, though, was handling both ground traffic at that particular part of the airport in addition to the inbound air traffic. We've talked to controllers who say that's normal at 11:30 on a Sunday night, and in fact, it can enhance safety because one person has a better feel for the entirety of the field and the inbound traffic, and they combine radio frequencies, and so there's better communication. The investigators will be asking a lot of questions of the controllers on duty, recounting specifically what happened. And then they're going to do those interviews, but also do mandatory drug and alcohol testing. That's normal, any investigation. They're going to look into how much sleep the controllers on duty had in the prior 24, 48, 72 hours. They're going to also be interviewing the firefighters who survived. They'll talk to the surviving members of the crew, the flight attendants, and passengers who may want to share what happened. And then looking at the history of that particular plane. But all evidence right now would suggest this was not a mechanical issue. This, in fact, appeared to be human error, allowing a fire engine to cross onto an active runway when you're on an inbound Air Canada flight. Back to you.
New video today shows the destruction in Israel after new strikes from Iran. Some were shot down, but others did strike several buildings in Tel Aviv. Drone video from today shows the extent of damage to the residential buildings that were hit. According to local reports, 3 buildings were heavily damaged while several cars were wrecked. As of Tuesday morning, there were no official reports of casualties in the strikes, but the Israeli army said search and rescue forces were deployed to several areas in the central part of the country to look for victims. New this afternoon, the Gophers have a new leader for the men's hockey team. St. Cloud State head coach Brett Larson just signed a 5-year deal to lead the squad. Larson has 16 years of coaching experience, 8 of those years as a head coach of the Huskies. In his time in St. Cloud, Larson led the team to 4 NCAA tournaments, 2 conference championships, and the school's first ever national championship game back in 2021. He also served twice as an assistant coach for the University of Minnesota Duluth, where he went to school. Stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.